In early October, my husband, my dad, and two of our good friends had the trip of a lifetime, a trip to Rome and Florence in Italy. It was a whirlwind of a trip lasting only 1 week so that we wouldn't be away from our kids for too long, but we got to see so many incredible things. In today's video, I wanted to share some of the places that we got to visit and my thoughts on why I think Rome and Florence are the perfect destinations for a Catholic art-inspired pilgrimage. And the best part? It costs less than $2,500 for both my husband and I to go, including our flights. My friend and fellow artist Elizabeth Salasco initially came up with the idea of creating a pilgrimage that catered to Catholic artists. Though her original plan to lead a pilgrimage group to Italy didn't come to fruition in the way she had originally intended, we decided to find a way to do it ourselves. We kept the bones of her original pilgrimage and got help planning our week with the help of my friend Ima, an Italian native who grew up in Naples. This would be my first ever trip to Italy, or Europe for that matter. One of the running jokes about our trip was that our trip felt anointed because of all the little God winks and ways that things worked out in our favor. The biggest blessing and God wink other than the trip itself was scoring really cheap round-trip flights to Italy. We saw that Delta had flights for only $539 a person, and when we went to check out, the price dropped down to only $509 a person. Liz called it the Jesus discount, and this huge discount on our flights allowed our husbands and my dad to join us on the trip. Because our time was limited, we knew that we wanted to try to hit 1 or 2 major sites a day, and we spent over a year planning, saving, and getting our tickets reserved for the main attractions of our trip. We intentionally picked Rome and Florence because it was important for us to spend time seeing Vatican City and all of the incredible treasures inside of the Vatican Museums, and Florence because of the rich history of artists who have created some of the most important pieces of sacred art in history. Our first day was spent walking around some of the big sites in Rome, such as the Spanish Steps, the Trevi Fountain, and the Pantheon. I was completely blown away by the Pantheon's dome, the world's largest unreinforced concrete dome. The Pantheon is also the resting place of artist Raphael, whose work we saw a lot of throughout our trip. The next day was spent at the Vatican visiting St. Peter's Basilica, climbing the cupola, which was totally worth it even though I'm afraid of heights. We ate pasta at a restaurant Pope Benedict was said to have loved, and we ended the day visiting the Vatican Museums and the Sistine Chapel. The following morning, our church's deacon and his wife, who just happened to be visiting Rome the same time we were, took us to Santa Maria Maggiore, Santa Maria della Vittoria to see Bernini's St. Teresa in Ecstasy statue, and another beautiful and old church in Rome before we traveled to Florence by train. We stayed at a little convent while in Florence, and we ended the day visiting Santa Maria del Fiore and getting a chance to hear some amazing church bells. We also found the best little gelato place that we ended up eating at almost every day we were in Florence. For our first full day in Florence, we hit the art museums. We started off with the Uffizi Galleries, where you could see masterpieces created by Botticelli, Leonardo da Vinci, Raphael, and more. We ate some really good sandwiches. I rode the carousel at Piazza della Repubblica, and we continued on to Galleria dell'Accademia to see the statue of David and more incredible artwork. We happened to wrap up our gallery visits just in time to attend Mass at Santa Maria del Fiore and see the incredible dome. The next day, we took a trip across the Ponte Vecchio to see the Pitti Palace. More incredible artwork filled room after room after room in the palace, and we wandered the Boboli Gardens, finding little tunnels, paths, and so much more. We ended our trip in Florence by having a traditional Florentine steak at a cute little trattoria, and we traveled back to Rome the next day and wrapped up the trip by seeing the arena floor of the Colosseum and visiting the Roman Forum. I kept telling my husband throughout the trip, everything is so much bigger and more beautiful than I imagined. When we studied all of these buildings and all of the artwork back when we were students in college, a slide in a PowerPoint or a photograph can only show you so much detail. And that's why I think it's important for Catholics and Catholic artists to expose yourself in person to our rich history and artwork. We just barely scratched the surface of what these cities had to offer for our trip, and there was a lot that we planned to see but didn't end up having time to see in this visit. But this trip was a great intro into the Catholic art world, and it really lit a fire in my heart. Before this trip, I was feeling really apathetic as an artist. I think part of it was artistic and emotional burnout in the months leading up to our trip, and I was feeling really discouraged about the state of art and the role of creatives in today's world. My husband and I both work in creative fields, and we had been experiencing a lot of negativity and underappreciation in some of our different work projects. I'll be completely honest and admit that there were days when I thought about completely resigning from the art world and pursuing something different. But I mean it when I say that my attitude completely changed after coming home from Italy. As Catholics, we often talk about the importance of truth, beauty, and goodness, and I really felt that in Italy. When we were at the Vatican, my dad and I were talking about the glory of God and how we had never before been in a space like St. Peter's Basilica, where every inch of the building, from the architecture to the sculptures to the mosaics to the fellow pilgrims spontaneously singing together, it just fully illustrated in a tangible way the glory of God. I've been an artist my whole life, and I consider myself to be a very sensitive person. It's not uncommon for me to cry in movies or books, but I can't remember ever crying in front of a piece of artwork until I stood underneath the Sistine Chapel. I was looking up with tears running down my face because my brain just couldn't fully comprehend the beauty created by the hand of Michelangelo. I saw so much tender and powerful religious artwork throughout the trip, and it lit a fire in me. The reality is that it's still hard to be an artist in today's world with today's challenges, but it helped to remind me that the arts are important and that as a church, we need beauty. We need art, and we can use art to glorify God. Have you been on a pilgrimage? What sites would you recommend to me and fellow Catholic creatives for a future trip? I would love to hear your thoughts, and feel free to comment if you have any questions about our trip. I want to remind you that you are loved, God loves you very much, and He loves your artwork very much. Thank you so much for following along, and I'll see you in the next video.